These are the exact hiring systems that I've used in my own tutoring business, Lisa's Study Guides, and the same hiring systems that I've taught my TutorBoss clients to help them push past 6 figures and also break 7 figures in their businesses as well. So the common problem that a lot of tutors have in scaling your tutoring businesses is, how do you scale beyond you? And when you're ready to start hiring a tutor or you start trying to build your team, the most common mistakes are that tutors don't hire before they have a waiting list of students. They tend to overhire tutors, so you've got a lot of tutors on your team, but you don't have the lead generation traffic to actually give those tutors your students. And a lot of tutors hire out of desperation, so you're hiring non-ideal fits for your business, which actually leads to more problems down the track. So because I know that a lot of you have been struggling with building your teams and making a lot of these common mistakes, which by the way, I also made these mistakes too, I asked my community of tutor bosses on Instagram and also on my email list, what were your biggest burning questions when it came to building teams and hiring systems? So in today's video, I'm changing things up a little. I'm going to be incorporating some of the responses I had already answered on my IG stories, and I'm going to elaborate on some of the answers here and also answer a couple of bonus questions that I wasn't able to answer on my IG stories quite yet. So the first question is, can you hire tutors with no waiting list? So I personally wouldn't recommend you hire tutors if you don't have a waiting list, because if you hire tutors and there's a lag time between when the tutor gets signed on with you with when they actually get a student, that lag time, the longer it is, the more demotivated they will be. You want to be able to give your tutors students as soon as possible, because you want to capitalize off the fact that when they first sign up with you, they're super excited. They can't wait to tutor. And so you're excited to have them on the team too. But if you don't give them students soon and it takes you weeks, if not months, for you to give them their first student, that motivation and that spark is going to die from their side and also from your side as well. So I'd really highly recommend that you have a waiting list of students primed and ready to go as soon as your tutor gets started with you. So imagine what your tutor would be feeling. They have been promised the world when it comes to working with you and your company. They know that they're going to get students. But if their expectation isn't met and they don't get students, then what that builds is resentment. It builds frustration. It makes them question why they actually decided to work with you and your company when they probably could have gone to a competitor of yours, and they would think the grass is greener on the other side. Maybe I would have a student by now. Maybe I'd be working with a lot more students by now. And so there's a statistic that says after you've made a purchase at any company, any purchase item, your first 48 hours after that purchase is crucial, because it creates that first impression of the behind the scenes of what it's like to be a customer, but also that first 48 hours leaves a lasting impression. Just like when you go out there and you meet new people, someone with a retching bee face is going to leave that first impression of, oh, it doesn't seem like they're very interested in talking to me, they seem a bit cold, and it can take some time for you to actually overcome that. Apply that to a business setting. When your tutors first get started working with you, they're highly motivated, they're highly excited. And so you want to capitalize off that by making sure you can give them that student, which gives them that great first impression of, Lisa said when she hired me that she would be able to give me students straight away, and she's done that. I'm going to build trust in her because she sticks by what she says. And I know that moving forward, that the way that this company is run is likely to follow in suit with what she says. Contrast that with people who have broken your trust, who've said one thing but haven't actually met expectations. It's the same thing when it comes to your tutors. So on this note, if you are interested in learning more on how to hire your dream tutoring team from your job description, how to write that up to attract your ideal tutor, to actually doing interview questions where you can really help educate your tutor on what the expectations they could have of the company once they start actually working with you, then I recommend you go and check out my Hire Your Dream Team workshop. I ran this not too long ago to 60 amazing tutor bosses. It was a 3-day workshop where I covered the A to Z of hiring your next tutor. And inside, I also go through Q&As with the tutors, answering all sorts of different questions. So if you're interested in purchasing that, I'll make sure to link it for you in the card above and in the description box below as well. well. Now, the next question is, how many one-on-one students did you have before considering hiring tutors? For myself, I had 30 students before I considered hiring tutors. This is going to look different for everyone, by the way. I've had tutors who've started hiring tutors when they've been booked out at 4 students for themselves. So it's really a question of what does your schedule look like and what does booked out look like for you? For me, I was able to look after 30 students because I was literally doing tutoring full time. I'd quit pharmacy and I was full bent on being a tutor. So after 30 students, I realized, okay, this is a bit too much. And then I had a wait list. And so I figured, you know what? I'm going to hire my first tutor. The sweet spot is for you to hire just before you're ready. So I have a client, his name is Hari. Hi, Hari, if you're watching this. And he did exceptionally when he joined my signature program, Master Your Tutoring Game Plan. So he had 7 students to begin with, but by 11 students, he was already overbooked. So you can see that the difference between 7 to 11 students, it's not that many, but it is very fine balance that you need to walk because you need to figure out how tutoring fits in with your life as well. And in Hari's situation, not only was he doing tutoring, but he was balancing that with full-time uni. So with Hari, because he realized that he had overcommitted, he realized that he needed to hire a team. So he hired 2 amazing first tutors onto his team, which actually grew his income from £800 through to £2,000. And all of this happened within the space of 3 months. Now, because Hari was able to hire on board these 2 students, he was able to reassign a few of his students to these tutors. This is not the most ideal situation because you don't want to have to reassign someone who's signed up with you to a tutor because that disrupts their learning. Of course, if it needs to happen so that you can protect your space so that you don't get burnt out as the business, then absolutely, I think that's what needs to happen so that you can take care of everybody, because it is not going to work out if you're burnt out, and that means that you're not going to be able to look after your student with your best self. So I would recommend once you get to around 80% capacity with your tutoring, that's when you would start thinking and start looking to hire your first tutor. Next question, what do you do if most parents want you to tutor their kids and not a hired tutor? So essentially, this is a self-fulfilling prophecy. People are only asking you for you because there's nobody else in your business, right? And so we want to shift the mindset from just talking about you and that this business and people only want you to how can we shift to we? Now, think about the person who's coming to you. What they need is a solution to their problem. And their pain point is that maybe they're not getting high enough grades in school. They don't have enough confidence when it comes to speaking their language at home, if you're a language tutor. They don't have enough confidence going into their music exam, if you're a music tutor. And so what they need isn't necessarily you specifically, but they need someone who can help them get to their end result, get to their end goal, their dream outcome. So what I would say to people when they would actually come through to me is, I'm so sorry, I'm fully booked out at the moment. However, I do have tutors on my team that I highly recommend. They are fully vetted by me. And this one is really important that you say they're fully vetted by me, because what you're doing is you're putting your own reputation and your credibility on the line. And that means something to people, because if you don't lose anything from it, then how am I to trust you and trust what you have to say? But if you say, look, I really vouch for these tutors, I have vetted them, I have gone through a whole process where I only accept certain people onto my team, they share the same teaching philosophy as me, they have the same resources that I would use in my classes, and they're fully supported by me as well, so I oversee them in their tutoring, then that's going to inspire a lot more confidence. Now, if you find that they're a little bit hesitant, a little bit unsure about the tutor, then there are carrots that you can dangle to encourage them to come over the line. So it could be something like saying that you don't have any contracts, you're happy for them to just try one lesson and see how they go. That could be enough just to incentivize people to move over that line to make the purchase with your tutor. Or you could even say, hey, I'm happy to give you a free trial lesson. That's if you're okay to not be paid for that session. I'm okay to give you a free trial session. How would you feel about just giving this tutor a shot? Most of the time, if you've got a good tutoring team, then they're going to be able to win over that student, and that student is going to feel comfortable and happy with their decision. Now, I know that a side note question that many of you will have is, do I pay the tutor for that session? Personally, I'm a big believer that people should be paid for the time that they're working. So I personally pay the tutor, and that is out of pocket from my end, but that's okay because I know that my tutors are incredible tutors, and because I've taught them how to run an amazing first session, 9.9 times out of 10, we will convert the student. You'll also find over time that as your tutors get really good at what they do, they're gonna actually start getting referrals. So then it's not about you anymore. And so you'll notice that people start calling your company and they go, hey, can I please work with Emily? Can I please work with Anna? Can I please work with Christine? And that's when you know it's no longer that self-fulfilling prophecy of only being you, it's about your team now. Okay, so the next one is super juicy. Next is if you have a very strong hunch that your tutor is booking private lessons with your student, what would you do? This is a juicy one. So if you have a hunch that your tutor is basically stealing your students, then what I want you to do is to have a chat with them. Communication is key. So I would get them into a phone call and I would say to them, hey, I've noticed that I gave your student about a month ago. You had a couple of lessons with them, but I've noticed that you haven't had any lessons since. Can I ask you why that is the case? And just have open dialogue with them, actually find out what it could be. Because, you know, at the end of the day, this is still it's still a hunch. You don't know with 100% certainty, and you could be surprised with the results that come out of this. I'm a big believer of being compassionate first, and then if it is, whatever the case is, that they have actually taken the student, which they wouldn't tell you, it will just look like they've lost the student, but that actually reflects poorly on them. It makes it look like they aren't performant as a tutor, and then you're going to have to invest more in their training. And honestly, if they constantly lose students, you're not going to want to keep giving them students. So that's what I have to say about it. There is absolutely no need for you to retain a tutor who isn't performing. And there's also a couple of other things you can put in place to minimize that risk of tutors stealing your students. And one of them is having a non-compete in your tutor contract. So I would highly recommend that you get a lawyer, draft up a proper contract where you have a non-compete clause. This means that the tutor won't be able to take your clients from your business, and they won't be able to start up a competing tutoring business on their own either. The other thing you can also do is actually just have documentation when your tutors get onboarded with what to do if students actually try to surpass your company and try to work with the tutors directly. Or maybe it'd be the parents who ask them directly, hey, could we just work with you directly rather than through the company? So by having documentation like this where you're outlining steps that they would take, you're also showcasing to your tutors that you are very well aware that instances like this happen. And so with us, what we said to our tutors is, hey, look, sometimes this is going to happen and we understand that it happens. Here's what the next steps are for you. So we would recommend that you have a conversation with the parent and say, I'm so sorry because of my relationship with the company, my contract with the company, it means that I'm not allowed to actually go and surpass the company to work with the student directly. Moreover, I actually am very much supported by the company through training, through resources that I would no longer have once I actually work with you directly. This is just one example of how you could create that guide. Write it in a way that actually feels good to you and how you would run your business. This is what feels good to me. And I think ultimately, a question like this where you're fearful of your tutor stealing clients, I think it comes from a place of not feeling like you have that self-worth, not feeling like your company is good enough. Ultimately, if a tutor wants to steal a client, you're not going to know. No one's going to tell you, right? Unless you can really dig deep and try to figure it out. But in most cases, you won't really ever know. And it's very hard to prevent. And so what I would rather you focus on is, how do I build a company where my tutors really thrive, where my tutors feel so loyal to my company that they don't want to actually go and steal my students, even if they are offered that opportunity. We've actually had in Lisa Study Guides multiple occasions where tutors came up to us and said, hey, this is really awkward. This is what just happened. What should I do? And so that's how I knew to actually create those guides for my tutors. But I felt so grateful that my tutors actually came to me for that support, and they didn't want to go and work without Lisa Study Guides. They wanted to be a part of that Lisa Study Guides team and community. And so I really want you to focus on, how do I build that dream culture that tutors would love to work in? And I think when you focus on that, it's really going to help you feel more abundant about your business, and it's going to help you focus on what makes your business more powerful in the long run. And focusing on things like culture, like resources, tutor support, that's all going to add value and help your business scale, rather than being on this side where you're constantly operating from a source of scarcity and always being scared and distrustful that your tutors are going to steal your students, or that your students don't really see value in working at your company, etc. Okay, so the next question is, what does your business need to have in place before you hire a tutor?
Consistent leads. That is what your business needs to have before you start hiring a tutor, because you want to be able to hire a tutor and then be able to give them a student straight away, but then you want to be able to consistently give them students so that they get fully booked out. If you don't have a pipeline of leads coming through your business that is consistent, then you're not going to be able to achieve this. And when you're not able to give your tutors students, then they're just going to sit around and go, okay, well, you know what? Maybe I should have gone to that other company. I should have gone with that other tutoring company that was offering me even more money. Why am I working here? Because I'm not even getting students. Trust me, like, this actually happens. And so if you want to avoid that type of situation, you want to keep your tutors motivated, keep them happy, and offer them opportunity to work. The key is having consistent leads in your business.
So what did this mean in reality for me and Lisa Study Guides? I had built my business off word of mouth for years. Because I was getting my students exceptional results, that in itself would mean that the students and parents would start marketing me through word of mouth, which was completely free for me, to their family and friends. And so I would consistently be getting leads into my business. That's how I was able to quit pharmacy and start working full-time, having 30 students underneath my belt, because I knew that I would never be at a loss in terms of students, because there were always new leads coming my way. Now, as I built up my word of mouth, I also actually set up a website called VCE Study Guides, and I really worked on blogging. And through blogging, because I leveraged search engine optimization, what that meant is that a lot of my blogs would rank first for multiple keywords, which meant that when students were online searching up how to do a language analysis, how to write a text response essay, the keywords that I taught in my subject, my blog would be the first ranked on Google that would pop up. And so students would click into that, and then they would find out more about me, they'd get value from the blog, and then they would realize, hey, if I want more support, then I can ask Lisa for tutoring. And so when that website started to get me a lot of leads, I then start to stack my marketing efforts. So I had word of mouth, I had my website, and then finally I actually added on YouTube, which was probably one of the best decisions I had made in my business, because I noticed at the time, this is like 2015, nobody else in the space was on YouTube. And I realized, looking at my own skills, I think I present well in front of the camera, I love talking, and it's just easy for me to actually teach on camera. So I figured, why don't I start a YouTube channel? And then over the next couple of years, I pumped out a video every single week, and eventually that channel grew up to 70,000 subscribers. And through YouTube, I started to get a lot of leads as well. So I actually started hiring tutors around that point when I quit pharmacy. So when I was moving from word of mouth to really leveraging my website and adding on even more leads to my bucket. And then eventually down the track, when I as I kept scaling my team, I understood that I needed to generate even more leads. And so that's when I stacked YouTube on top of it as well. So for you, what does that mean? You don't have to follow in my exact footsteps. You don't have to do word of mouth, then a website, then YouTube. That's why I work with my TutorBoss clients. This is what I would want you to figure out for yourself. Like, what are your strengths and what actually appeals to you? Because I think that when it comes to marketing, marketing works if you're consistent with it and if you actually have an interest in it. If you feel like you have to go onto LinkedIn because some random guru told you so, but there's no internal motivator, you don't feel any joy when it comes to jumping on LinkedIn, then I would actually say don't do LinkedIn, because if you're not going to feel excited about it, you're not going to do it. You're going to keep procrastinating it. Find the marketing channels that lean on your strengths. And sometimes when we start out, we don't quite know what our strengths are, and that is okay. But it's important that you go out and experiment. So when I filmed my first video, I didn't know for sure if I would love filming videos. I didn't know for sure that it would be something I'd want to do long term, but I just had a hunch. I was like, you know what? I'm not too scared of being in front of the camera, and I think I could use that as an advantage compared to a lot of people who are. So let me just give this a go. Did I like figuring out how to use a DSLR? No. Did I like figuring out the tech when it came to microphones? No. Did I like figuring out doing the lighting inside a room? No. I'm still figuring it out now. I'm like, oh, is this going to look good? I don't know. But that's just part of the process. It's part of the figuring out process of, okay, is this something that I want to do consistently for the long term? And now I've been on YouTube for like 9 years now, which is absolutely hectic. So to circle back to the question, what does your business need to have in place before you hire a tutor? It's what any business needs to have in their business in order for you to actually have a business. And that is to have leads and therefore turning those leads into customers. Next question is, do you recommend geo arbitrage to hire tutors? So geo arbitrage means to hire tutors regardless of where they live in the world. And honestly, if you have an online tutoring business and it doesn't matter where people are actually living, then heck yes, why not? I think ultimately when it comes to tutoring businesses, most of us really just need people who have the right credentials for what they're doing and they are motivated and committed to the job. So that's what you should look out for as a business owner who is actually hiring tutors. And probably the biggest thing that you'll need to deal with as a pain point of having tutors all over the world is just the different time zones. I know we live in 2024 now where post-COVID, everything is on Zoom. So most people are pretty comfortable with Zoom. But what I do find is that people still really struggle with time zones. So that's just something that I want you to be aware of. You might have tutors, and I know that this happened with one of my TutorBoss clients the other week. She got really frustrated with a tutor of hers because the tutor had said that they were available from this time to this time, but when the session was booked in, she didn't actually show up to the session. And so my TutorBoss client was just really resentful and feeling really frustrated. She was like, why does this tutor just not show up to these lessons? Because it didn't just happen once, it happened multiple times. And so what I said to her is, hey, look, in most circumstances, tutors don't try to be SHs. They really want to try to do their best. Most people want to do well in their jobs. So I recommended that she actually just go and have a sit down or sit on Zoom and have a conversation to see what actually went wrong. And it turns out that it wasn't that the tutor didn't want to be in the session or that they had even forgotten about it. It was because of the time zones. So it turns out that the student lived in America when the tutor actually lived in the Philippines. And because of the software they were using, the software was in the US time zone, but the tutor thought it was in the Filipino time zone. And so she plugged in what she thought were her times, but they were actually US times. So that created a lot of confusion. And what I really love about this story is that my TutorBoss client, she wanted to fire this tutor because she was so frustrated, but we were able to save that relationship with the tutor just by acknowledging that it was a time zone mistake. We fixed up the system so that she wouldn't make that mistake again. And now she's actually one of their highest performing tutors with a lot of students underneath her belt. Now, the next question is, what about tutors unwilling to go out of their way for face-to-face, too picky about who they get as students? So I would say here, if you have tutors who are unwilling to go out of their way for face-to-face, the first question is, are they actually an ideal fit for you and your company? Because if you do face-to-face tutoring and it is a core part of what you need your tutors to do, then you probably shouldn't have hired them if they're not willing to actually do the face-to-face. When you go out and hire tutors, you have to be very cognizant and you have to be very intentional with who it is you want to hire. That's why I always talk about hiring your dream tutor, because I literally want you to imagine, if I had the perfect tutor, what would they be okay with and what would they be really down for? And for you, it might be that you really want them to make sure that they're happy with face-to-face tutoring, especially if that is a core part of what you do. And the second part I would say to this is, did you set the right expectations when you were hiring and onboarding that tutor? So did you let them know who they would be getting as their students? Did you let them know how many face-to-face versus online students they may get? Did you ask them, are you okay with face-to-face versus online? And if you're okay with both, how many of one or the other would you be okay with? When it comes to the interview process and onboarding tutors, it's a negotiation. It's a back and forth of what makes sense for you and your business, but also what makes sense for them as well. So I don't want you to hire out of desperation. If you know that you need tutors who are okay with face-to-face, but this particular candidate isn't, then maybe they're just not the right fit for your business. So it's really important that as you go through that interview process, that you also ask the tutor for their preferences as well. I think that when you're inexperienced as an interviewer and as a hirer, you go out there and you try to find what you're looking for, but too many tutors don't necessarily ask their candidates what they're looking for as well. But you can actually get a lot of information for the type of questions they ask you, but also the preferences that they have as well. So for example, you might ask them, are you okay with face-to-face? And they might say yes. But later on in the interview, you might actually find out from them, oh, I'm really packed with my schedule. I have uni, I have extracurricular activities, I have my retail job, and now I'm doing tutoring as well. And they might say to you, I actually prefer to have online sessions. And so that gives you a really big insight of, okay, even if they said yes to the face-to-face, which they may just be saying to appease you and just to land the job, you got to really keep your eye out for reading between the lines and what they're actually capable of doing. Ultimately, there needs to be an alignment with the tutor you hire and your business as well. If there isn't alignment, then you need to be okay with actually saying no to tutors. And I know it can be really hard for you to say no, especially in the beginning, especially if you're really desperate to hire a tutor, but I promise you, you don't want to be in a situation like this where you've got a tutor on your team, but they're being really difficult because they're not okay with what you actually need them to do. And so again, I'm going to circle back to that workshop that I had not too long ago, Hire Your Tutoring Dream Team. If you want to learn more on who your ideal tutor persona is, really have that clarity on your perfect tutor so that you can go out there, write a job description that really starts to attract your dream tutor, and then move into the interview process where you know the exact questions you need to ask. I give you the exact questions that I use in Lisa's study guides and that I crafted after interviewing over 100 tutors for the team. When you go out there and ask those questions and you're very intentional and strategic, that's how you're going to land your dream tutor. And when you land your dream tutor, you won't be asking questions like, what if they steal my clients anymore? You won't be asking questions like, but what if they're not willing to do this or they're not willing to do that? And for me, as your tutor coach, this is where I would really, really love you to be, because I want you to know that it is totally possible for you to hire your dream tutor. Now, I know that these are some of the most burning questions that you have about hiring a tutoring team. So if you've watched all the way until the end of this video and you got value out of it, I'd love for you to comment the word hire, because that tells me that you have enjoyed this video. I've been really enjoying creating these hiring, building a team videos recently. And so I'm going to do more of them if you find them beneficial to you and your tutoring business. Now, a couple of weeks ago, I shared more about my failures of hiring a team. I created this video over here where I talk about how I tried to hire 30 tutors within the space of 60 days and how I massively failed there. So there's a lot of juicy lessons for you to take away so you don't have to repeat them for yourself in your company. And next week, I'm actually going to drop a new video where I share with you how I built my tutoring business up to making $15,000 months, where most of it was passive income because I was only working in my business roughly 5 hours a week. And that was because I actually chose to do so. So if you want to watch that video, then make sure you subscribe to this channel so that you get updates when that video drops. Otherwise, I hope you enjoyed this video and I hope you have a great week, and I will see you next week. Bye.